Hey there, artists. We've already read a story about fairies, and today we are going to be drawing our very own fairy house. And sort of like the ceramic fairy house that I'm holding right here, our fairy house drawing is going to be made out of twigs and sticks and leaves. It's going to have some ferns around it, and it's going to sort of look like it could just blend into the forest, which is where in the traditional stories fairy houses might be found, so that they can sort of hide away and disappear. So I'm going to put this aside. This was a fairy house that a friend made for me, that I can put in my garden and make it look like these little fairies can help my plants grow. And we are going to be trying to draw and color our fairy house. So for this, all you need is a piece of paper and a pencil. And then, of course, at the very end, you can choose to color this however you want. Okay, but we're going to be using the entire paper to make our fairy house. The first thing that we're going to do is start near the top, draw the house, and then start to add some things around it. At the very end, I have a special challenge for you. If you have access to any trees or a few leaves from the ground, at the very end, we can make it look even a little bit more whimsical with special leaf rubbing, okay? So let's start in the top, almost near the middle, and do a little A shape, like an uppercase A, for the roof of the house. Now we're going to make our house about this big, and then put a tree sort of that the house is sitting on. So the house is going to be, the roof is going to be an A shape, but I kind of want it to curve a little bit. Okay, I'm going to use this word whimsy or whimsical, and all that means is that it looks not normal, right? It looks a little bit magical, a little bit imaginary, and sometimes it's a little more fun to look at. So this roof is going to be made of twigs, which means once you've got the basic shape of the roof, I want you to go through and I want you to make these like they're made out of little sticks, okay? You can make some pointy, you can have some with little branches and twigs and leaves that come off of them, little scraggly marks there, and do the same thing on the other side. See how I'm just sort of making these little curved shingle-like rectangles, okay? I'm gonna add a little bit of a snail here. Okay. Climbing up the roof. I'm gonna add a smokestack made out of a stick, but I'm gonna have this curly smoke coming out of it, okay? I'll do one of those little round knots in the wood. And then I'm gonna add a lot of these U shapes for the shingles, okay? This is the same shape that we have used so many times this year for feathers on our birds when we're drawing birds, for scales on a fish when we've been drawing fish, and now we're gonna do shingles on a roof. Shingles basically are pieces of wood that overlap, and it keeps rain from getting in. So rain would hit and then just trickle on down. What I want you to do is shade that in a little bit. Usually we wait until the end before we shade, but we're gonna sort of shade as we go, because we're just gonna be using the pencil. And then at the end, even with shading on there, you can color it in however you want. The best part about using colored pencils, crayons, or markers is that they color over regular pencil very easily. I want you to notice that I am shading in between the U's on the bottom and the side. And that's just because the shingles are not flat. I mean, they are flat, but they have a little bit of dimension to them. They raise up off the surface a little bit, which means they do cast shadows. And we're gonna be talking about, as we learn how to make more and more art together, we're gonna be talking about how when we add shading to things, it makes them look more realistic. Okay, every time we make a drawing, we're gonna be leaving some areas white or light, and some areas we're gonna make dark, okay? So I'm gonna do a couple little shapes over here. These are just sort of like little leaves and twigs. And now it's time for the house. Okay, this house is gonna be made out of tree bark. Let's do a little bit of a piece of wood here. I'm gonna do a dark triangle here, because these houses are not made the way that we make houses, okay? These are fairy houses. These are make-believe, imaginary houses, which means they are put together by these whimsical, magical, imaginary woodland creatures. And they don't really believe in making things so that they hold together too well. They just need them to be strong enough that they can fly in and out. So they have some twigs and leaves going across. But basically we're gonna make these downward lines that are strips of wood and bark. And then on the top of the door, we're gonna have these little pebbles, these little stones that go over the door. And now it's time to make a door. And I want you to do a door frame, which is the same rectangular shape, inside and out. When you're drawing, if your lines get wobbly, that's great. This is one of those drawings where wobbly lines are actually what we're looking for, okay? So just keep shading in like I'm doing. You can add whatever cool contraptions you want. I think this is like a little acorn shell. That's probably how they collect water, okay? And so the water drips down the shingles, goes into the acorn shell, down a chute, into the door, which is how they get water to drink. So I'm gonna make some lines that make the door look like it's wood. I'll do a sort of rock shape here and shade it in. Because fairies can fly, they probably don't care if there's rocks around their house. I'm gonna do grass, and I remember teaching you how to do grass a couple weeks ago, that it's just sort of zigzag lines, but it's not regular zigzag lines. You sort of go in all directions, okay? We don't wanna go like this, right? That doesn't look like realistic grass. That's sort of like the scales that we did on our dinosaurs last week. Instead, I sort of go long, short, short, long, okay? All right, I'm gonna shade in over here a little bit. I've got some craziness going on this side. This looks like probably where they keep some of their magic items or food. And I'm gonna do a heart-shaped window because if you were a fairy, you would probably design a heart-shaped window as well. Okay, so I've got a heart. This is made out of twigs too. So do some lines around the outside, but then on the inside, I want you to draw a T, like a lowercase t. And I want you to leave that T white, but I want you to shade in the windows. I'm just gonna make it look like the fairies are out playing. Okay, this is looking pretty cool. I like how this is looking. I'm gonna just add a few hatch marks here. Hatch marks are lines going in one direction. It's one way of shading and adding a little bit of detail. I like how that looks, but remember, this is sort of like a tree house, okay? Remember, fairies can fly. I know they're imaginary, but in my imagination, they can fly. And in a lot of stories, they have wings and they can fly around. People have been making up stories about fairies for a long, long time. Sometimes they make up stories about fairies to explain things that they can't really explain. And sometimes they just do it for fun, to entertain their children, or because it's fun to use our imagination and come up with stories. So this fairy house is going to be sitting on a little bit of a platform. And notice that I left a little bit of white space in between the top of our grass and the bottom of our platform. But I brought it over here and brought it up. Excellent. Shade in the bottom of it a little bit because the sun is not hitting the bottom of our platform. Okay. And then for fairies who don't have wings, or maybe some woodland creature visitors, let's go ahead and add a ladder, okay? Well, you know exactly how to do a ladder. It's like a bunch of letter H's connected together. Okay, so draw the shape of the ladder. It's almost like railroad tracks that are pointing up, all right? So go like this for me, okay? I want you to do a double ladder and over like this. Go. I want you to keep making squares and rectangles on the inside of your ladder. That's gonna make it look, and look how mine are irregular. Okay, so at the bottom, there's an upside down U, and at the top, there's a U. And then we can start to make these look like they're twigs that are lashed together with maybe some twine or rope or vines, okay? So see how I'm making this look actually less perfect. I'm making it look like there's rope here, and that these are little twigs. In fact, I'm gonna have that little, remember that those little leaf things coming off of them? Because fairies don't care if there's little leaves coming off. I love how this looks. Cool, let's make the other end of the tree stump that this is built on. And remember, we're just gonna do irregular wavy lines and then shade a little bit. We can do one of those, this is called a tree knot. It's like a little circle where the wood grows all funky and weird. I'm adding a little shading behind the ladder because the ladder is blocking a little bit of that sunlight. And now I'm gonna start adding a few more details, okay? A lot of times in the forests where people say that fairies live, there are toadstools and mushrooms that have circles on them. Even though it's fun to draw mushrooms, make sure that if you are out exploring looking for fairy houses, you do not eat the mushrooms. That is very important because some of them are poisonous, okay? Even though it's so much fun to draw them, there's only certain types of mushrooms that we can eat that we find from the grocery store, okay? Now, I'm gonna draw some ferns, okay? I'm gonna draw like 4 ferns, and then I'm gonna draw a very special type of fern called a fiddlehead fern, which is curvy, okay? So notice how I did a line, a curved line like that. That's the spine of the fern. And now I'm just gonna do lots of U shapes. Do it again over here. I go all the way up, all the way around. One more time. This one is curving down. Now I want you to do a curly Q. This is called a fiddlehead fern. These are like baby ferns. Curly and then curly back. These will be so much fun to draw. And I'm gonna do one facing the other way. Neato. Now, do some zigzags to bring this to the bottom of my page, and I am ready to color. Now, you can color however you want. I don't think I really need to show you how to color, except I just want to tell you that if you drew in pencil, maybe you should go back over some of your lines with black, because remember when you add color, especially with marker, especially with if you colored hard with colored pencil or crayons, you'll cover up all of that beautiful detail that you did. So I'm not going to color, but I am going to show you a couple leaves that I found outside. And these leaves, I think, will make very cool rubbings if I put them underneath my drawing. So watch while I slip some of them underneath the drawing. I'm gonna lift the page and put them here. Okay, let's see if this will work. I sure hope it does. All right, so I have some leaves that I've put underneath my drawing. Now I'm gonna take, let's say, for me, I'm gonna do purples and pinks, okay? But you can do greens if you want them to look like the leaves. And I'm gonna press hard while I use the side of my pencil. Now notice how I'm holding the pencil. I'm pushing my pointer finger down, and I'm holding it sideways. Normally I would draw with a colored pencil like this, like I'm holding a normal pencil, okay? But I'm gonna hold it along my palm with my pointer finger on top and push down, and I'm gonna rub back and forth and back and forth, and that's gonna make a leaf pattern behind my drawing. So notice that I positioned them in areas where it was white, so I had lots of white space. If I did this on top of my drawing, it would probably start to, it could look cool, but it'll probably start to look a little bit muddy, right? Hard to see the detail that you just spent so long drawing. Now notice that I just overlapped 2 colors, and I think that that looks pretty cool. I'm just picking up a drawing of something else underneath that I didn't want it to pick up. Be careful that you don't have anything else under your rubbing when you're doing this. See, I just learned from my mistake, but I still like how it looks. Neato. Now I think I have one that I hid down here in this corner. Do you see that? The shape of the leaf coming through in the behind? That is so cool. All right, one more down here. And while you're at it, you might as well make a few leaf rubbings. Now remember, you gotta get permission from your parents before you pick these leaves. You'll probably find some on the ground, although it's spring, so there's probably not a ton of leaves falling. But if there is a tree that you are allowed to pick some leaves from, just get a couple and see if you can add a little bit of texture leaf rubbing behind your fairy drawing. All right. Thanks so much. I had a lot of fun drawing with you, and I'll talk to you soon.